So in a previous video, I made sort of an ambient pad thing with plats controlled with planar. To go with my track, now what I'd like to do is create a sequenced pattern. One of the traps I think we've quite often fallen into is using the analog trigger sequences. You end up with sort of repeating 8-step sequences, which are fun but get boring quite quickly. So first off, I'm going to go through a technique to make the sequencer into a 16-step sequencer. So we effectively switch between row 1 and row 2 on the CV outputs. To do that, my trigger from the drum machine is going into the clock divider, and then the clock divider will output the original clock, then half, quarter, eighth, and 16th of the speed. So we use the original clock to drive the sequencer forward, and the 8th speed output to switch between the two rows using the sequential switch. I'd say that'd be good. I've found a couple of quirks with the clock divider. I think what it does is it will divide on the upgoing or possibly downgoing clock. So if you put the clock divider in the wrong place, you can end up with a sequence that feels like it's one step behind almost. Using it as the first thing in the clock chain seems to rectify that issue. We'll find out really, won't we? So we take out from the clock divider. What I'll do is pass that through a multiple just in case I need it in lots of places. And then that goes into my sequencer. So let's get some stuff playing. Okay, and we can see the sequencer running, I hope. Now what I'm going to do is take should be the 8th out into sequential switch. Which now switches between row 1 and row 2. What we now do, take row 1's output, and we plug that into the first input on the switch. Row 2's output, plug that into the second input. And then we take the main output from the switch. In the previous video, I used this disting as a quantizer, and then this one as a kind of slew generator. I'm going to do the same thing here. So we'll take the output from the switch into my quantizer. Take the output into slew generator. And now I need an oscillator. I think about what kind of sound I want to make. I feel like I need something to contrast flats, but I want something that's got a little bit of character to it. So I'll use the Minimod Moog style oscillator. So I'll use the 1 volt per octave input on there and send that to the mixer so we can hear what it's doing. Actually, let's put it through a filter. We used ripples quite a lot, so let's use cinnamon to filter this. And then we'll send that. I mean, you can straight away hear that it's a 16-step sequence. Play it alongside something that's already recorded. I mean, it's not necessarily in step with what's happening currently. If I reset the sequencer, that's a little better, and I can also reset the sequential switch. That doesn't seem to do quite so much. Alright, before I go any further, I want to make sure this thing's in tune, so I'm going to use my tuner to just check it out again. Why would that be C? There we go. That should work with the pad. I mean, it kind of does. All right. Let's finish the patch. So currently that sound's just happening all the time. So I need an envelope. What's a good envelope? Well, I'm going to use the VC ADSR because it's nice and visual. To trigger it, I'm actually going to use, I'm not going to use the sequencer to trigger it, I'm going to use the quantizer to trigger it. The quantizer will output a trigger every time a note's changed. This is really handy because what this means, let's say I set all these controls to 0. What this means is I'll only get a sequence while I've got notes changing. So I can start with a blank canvas and then turn dials and only get stuff happening when there's a change, and we should be able to see that happening. Currently, no change. There we see. When that changes then drops back again, we get 2 triggers. Awesome. What do we do with that? Well, we need to send that to 2 places. We need to send it to volume, and we need to send it to the filter so that we've got some degree of kind of tone control. Simplest thing to do here is use multiples. Find a nice small cable. I wonder what those tiny cables are for. So that will go into VCA. Let's check that out. Might just change the scale on the quantizer to something a bit more musical. checking the tuning on the quantizer. I've set my track to be in D. Which is point blank refusing to do, so let's just check it with the chords. Whatever. I'll just tweak the pitch in Ableton later on. Okay, let's deal with that filter modulation. What about this slew generator? I can control the slew amount with the Z input. Now if I send the switch from the switch layer from the sequencer to that input, use my switches here to decide which steps get a kind of slew on them. Quite fun while it's playing to change the scaling on both rows of steps. This one's got a dial to change the scaling of this row here, and this one's got a switch. Too much about key right now. I think this will sound awesome going through the delay, so that's what I'm going to do. So here's where my divided up clock, my multiples of clock come in handy, because I've already got that ready to go. I'm just going to send the clock input to the echo phone. got to be careful not to change the scaling while that row's playing, because it goes a bit weird otherwise. But I'm just keeping an eye on the sequential switch to see when to make those changes. So if 1's lit, I can change that one. And if 2's lit, I can change that one. What's great about this is because part of it's predictable. Obviously, I've patched it in a predictable way, and part of it's unpredictable because I don't quite know where these knobs are. I've been messing around with the quantizer and trying to get that working properly, but I'm not really sure what it's doing. The sequential switch isn't actually switching exactly in time with everything else, so it's not quite there. Cinnamon filter's a bit ropey, so it tends to create a little bit of distortion in the mix. So it sort of does its own thing, but also sort of does what I want it to. So I'm just going to put a few bars of this run in here to see how that goes. I was going to do a bit more of an ambient thing, but I feel like I know where this track's going, so I'm just going to go with it. If it was half speed actually, so I've just changed the steps on the drum machine. Let's make it half speed. So we'll do a half speed one and then proper one. Track, so hang on. Okay, that's cool. Double up the tempo. Yeah, I'll just jam with that as it's recording, I think. quite a lot going on here, so let's just recap. So the drum machine is going into the trigger from the drum machine is going to a clock divider. Clock divider standard rate out is being split to the sequencer to drive it forwards and to the echophone to do tempo delay. The divide by 8 output is going into a sequential switch through which both rows of the control voltage outputs from the sequencer are going, so they get switched over every 8 steps because it's an 8-step sequencer. That goes into a quantizer, that goes into a slew generator, that goes into the CV input on the mini-mod. The mini-mod output goes to cinnamon filter. The trigger from the quantizer goes into a gate which is split between the VCA and the filter so that we get volume and filter cutoff control from one envelope. The output from cinnamon goes out to the output from cinnamon goes out to the VCA. VCA goes through the echophone goes out to the mixer. So the whole thing, it goes through that one echo. And the CV control on the slew generator is controlled from the bottom row of switches on the sequencer, so I can switch in and out kind of analog, portamento between notes. Quite a big patch, that one. All right, that'll do for now. See you next time. That was a bit disturbing, wasn't it? See you next time.